Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Inside the Force. Dave Cottingham here with Cody Galler. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. It's a good evening. How are you doing?
It is a good evening. Thanks for joining me. Thanks, everybody, for joining us and listening and tuning in. We got a lot to dive into on this episode. Bad Batch is coming to a close, so we will talk a little bit about that. Some interesting little details of some upcoming content. Lego Star Wars is putting something else out. But the big news is this Galactic Starcruiser, which we'll start off with right now, and then we'll actually get into some more discussions about it later in our main topic. So anyway, this Galactic Starcruiser, Cody, so Disney put out the details. Now, the main details I think we should start off with first is that we've got a narrowed release date now, which is spring of 2022. And the prices have been somewhat released. I mean, they kind of said some pricing. It's not, I don't think it's all of them because there's different rooms we'll get into.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, just initial feelings, Cody, as you've seen some of these new images, read about what the experience is. What's your first thoughts of this new attraction that they've got going on right now?
I mean, I feel like seeing a lot of the concept art and now more like concrete sort of like conceptual photos and photography, it looks just really interesting and like a place any Star Wars fan would want to be, right? Everybody, like, I don't know, if I was, a Star Wars fan at a young age, so, I collected a lot of the toys and merchandise and things like that. And I feel like this is exactly what I would have wanted to do if I went and took a trip to Disney, is like stay in a room that felt like I was like in the bed that's like in the wall in the Millennium Falcon. Like they've
Yeah.
got those little beds. So it's definitely, I think it looks and feels very interesting and cool. I will say, just seeing the price off the front, now that is, they've got just starting prices. So, if you
Yes.
want like a more intensive suite or whatever, it definitely goes up. But looking at some of these prices, it's pretty expensive,
Mm-hmm.
even for like a Disney trip.
Yes.
Um, I don't know. Just like one thing when I think about like vacationing, traveling, and stuff, price is always a big portion of it. And you think about, okay, taking a trip to Orlando, right? Like you can get like a condo or like an Airbnb, and you get the entire place, and you have like a kitchen and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
for a much lower nightly rate, and can sometimes fit more people in. And then you could still go to Disney and still go to Batu, but you don't get this immersive
Right.
sort of storytelling experience. And I think that's the part that's maybe the most like interesting of like how they do it, because maybe that's the most unknown of it all.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about,
Mm-hmm.
it feels like it could be a bit like like you're in this it's almost like this role playing sort of game, it feels like.
Right.
So I'm really interested to hear from people that go and stay, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to be reviewing, doing video content and stuff. I'm really interested to hear what a perspective of somebody who stays, of what all the things that happen, maybe even not inside the hotel room, are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear everything you're saying. I think there's so many. For one, there's so many intrigue into this, but there's also so many questions, I believe, still that a lot of people need answered before they even think about going to this thing. Because it'd be tough, and I to be honest, I'd be the first one to get in line and say I want to try this first. But I understand the hesitancy that somebody may have, say like, well, I want to hear what it's like, or I want to maybe see some video of what it looks like. Am I getting my money's worth? That's the big question, I think, because it is a lot of money. I mean, I saw on Twitter right away when these prices came out, a lot of people on there were like, "Look, I'm a huge diehard Star Wars fan, but this is way too much for me. It would take me a while to save up to do this, and then it's like I don't even know if I want to waste my money doing that because." I can just go, like you said, go to a park and experience Batu, and that would be enough. I mean, I even saw people saying like, "Hey, Batu really wasn't that great for me. I'm not going to do this."
Mm.
So, so this is a major. Let's Before we get into details, let's just mention this. this is a major risk, I think, for Disney. This is a big investment into something that is so centered on one part of their property. I
Mm.
mean, it's Star Wars. You know, if you aren't a Star Wars fan, I don't think you're even thinking about this, right?
Oh yeah. Well, so help me out now. If you go stay in the hotel, this one, can you leave to go to other Disney parks,
No,
or you're like
this is it.
locked in basically to that and
It's a
Galaxy's Edge?
2 day. It's a 2 day itinerary. You saw the itinerary. I mean, it's a
I
two
did.
day
Yeah.
itinerary. You're not. There's no time to go anywhere else. You don't. You do not leave because that's the thing. The immersion part of it is that you're supposed to be on this starship. You're not at Disney World.
Mm.
You're on this starship. You take a shuttle when you go to Batu. You get into like a shuttle to go down to the planet.
Mm.
Like it's it's full immersion into the Star Wars universe. So that's what I'm saying. Like if you're just a Disney fan, you're not going to this thing.
Well, see, that's interesting because, like, even think about families that, even like, I love Star Wars, and my wife is, like, she likes parts of it, but she's not as into it as I am.
Right.
If we did a Disney trip, we've even talked about it before. It's like, okay, I'd like to do a day at Galaxy's Edge, right? And
Hmm.
so we'd like to take, like, my son and, go and do that. Um, but she's going to want to go to other Disney parks too. And even
Yes.
thinking about like kids and stuff. Okay, kids might be into Star Wars, but they might also want to go and experience some of the other fun parts of the Disney
Absolutely.
parks because you've done a lot of Disney trips, and sometimes it's about like, okay, we're doing Magic Kingdom on this day, and we're doing
Hmm.
Hollywood Studios on this day, and that's kind of how a lot of people, I think, structure their Disney trips is
Absolutely.
trying to take in as many as possible. And you've got the Pandora thing now, and you've got, the Avatar. You've got a lot of different places that I think people like to go to.
Right.
And I think it's a good point of saying that it's a risk because it does kind of exclude some of the other great parts of the Disney parks.
Of course. And the one detail that I haven't seen and I haven't read, which I think will be a major explanation on the pricing a little bit of this, is what's the capacity? Like
Mm.
how many people are there at one time? Because if you're talking, I'm just guessing it's probably only a few hundred, maybe. I don't know how you can fit. I don't know how you can entertain like a few thousand, right? I mean, like I don't know. You start thinking about numbers. I want to say, and this, I can completely off this, but like I feel like 50 to 60,000 people can fit into like Magic Kingdom or something like that. I think that's roughly capacity somewhere around there. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but you're talking about a lot of people. This being so immersive and so such attention to detail to every guest. I can't imagine it being that many people. You know what I mean? So when you look at the pictures, it's like there's pictures of the dining area, the bar area. I mean, it looks like normal sized places. So it's like, well, how do you fit every guest in there? You know what I mean? It's like I, they
like
have to
like
be
yeah, like think about, I mean,
around.
it depends on hotel size, but like hotel bars, right? A lot of times hotel bars are
Yes,
very small compared to the amount of people staying in hotels because a lot of times people aren't there, they're doing
right.
other things, so they're not expected to serve everybody.
Yes,
But if you can't leave, that brings up this whole question.
that's right.
Yeah.
And right now, we only know of the only places that has been talked about in a way is there's what's called the bridge, which is the front of the ship. You can go and actually see the front of the ship, see the windows there into space. It looks like a pretty decent sized space. There's like a main hallway. It looks like there was a picture of like Chewbacca hanging out in there. It looked like it's pretty decent size, but it looks like any kind of it didn't look like any size like a ballroom or any size like that, but just a couple big size room. Then there's like an engine room. There's a cantina, a bar area, and then there's a dining area. And the dining area did look pretty big. Like, and when we talk about the itinerary, the thing about it too is my wife brought up the good point that maybe the itinerary is based on groups. Maybe your group
Mm.
goes at this time, and then this other group comes in this time.
If you check in on a Thursday, you're doing this, and then if you check in on a
Yes,
Friday, it's slightly off. Yeah.
exactly. So they stagger the day because it's a 2 day experience, right? So what you do on the first day, there's someone else there that's doing it doing the second day stuff, right? And I'm assuming that's how they're doing it. So we'll get into that in a second. But back to your pricing, it says here like 2 guests per cabin. If you get a cabin that's only 2 guests, I mean it's $2,400 a person for both nights. I mean total. Now, if you want to think about it this way, that's technically it's all inclusive, right? You get your food, you get your drinks. Now, alcohol I think is different, is not included, but all your normal drinks, your food, snacks, and all that stuff is included. So 2 nights. Now that is a pricey hotel night. That would be equivalent to roughly staying in like a deluxe, what they call a deluxe hotel at Disney World. So if you're staying somewhere like Grand Floridian or Contemporary, or you're paying $400, $500, $600 a night, depending on the time of year. So, but that's still 12. So that's $1,200 a night. So if you say, but see again, if me and you stayed in the Polynesian, we'd be splitting the $600 a night, right? So it'd only be $300 a night, and then your tickets, $100, $150 for the park ticket. And then food, you're probably spending $100 to maybe $150 a day on food. So you're in that $600-$700 a day range. So this is about double that. So like what you said, you're paying for the experience to go on this thing. Is that worth double what the stay and the food is? That's the big question I think people have to answer. And I think that's going to eliminate a lot of people being able to make that decision and go, because there's a lot of people I don't think that can afford that.
Yeah. Well, and there's some people that affording it is one part of the equation, but even like the idea of like everything being part of canon, right? Like some people probably don't care that like their meals and the person that checks them into a hotel is all a part of this like canon sort of experience, right? Like, some people might just be like, okay, just, I want to just have like, a Dr. Pepper or a Coke or whatever, and I don't need it to be like a special little like Star Warsy version of it,
Yeah, right.
But
it is.
That's a separate sort of thing. Like, are your Cheerios going to be Star Wars Cheerios?
I mean, everything on there is unique to this experience, right? So it is and I haven't seen it fully, but I think they did release a food menu, an idea with it. So it is Star Wars centric food items, right? So, but in comparison, I do want to mention this though. In comparison, they do have a 4-person cabin. Now, this, like you said, this isn't the suite, so this is kind of the lowest end, but it ends up being $6,000 total. So if you have 4 guests, that's $1,500 a person. So that's $900 cheaper than if only the 2 of us went. That's a pretty big savings. And honestly, that $1,500 is more my take. Like I would be like, okay, I'm down with finding 3 guys that'll go with me and go hit this up and split that up, and let's do it. Because then you're getting into, if it's $1,500 a person, then you're into the $750 a day. That's more along the lines of what we'd be paying anyway if we went to a deluxe and went to a park all day and spent money on food and stuff. Then you're talking about the same pricing.
Now that also includes the Batuu, the Galaxy's Edge, portion
experience.
Of it. For what is it? One of the days you're going.
One of the days you go there. It seems like we'll get into in a second, but yeah, it just seems like it's like the morning part. You go and ride the rides there, and then you can walk around and experience the droid build. I think there's even lunch there at Docking Bay. There's a thing called Docking Bay 7 there. You have lunch there. So you do get a chance to go and experience Batuu as well. So in that sense, now, again, even though the pricing is along the lines of the same, you're not getting the entire park like you would normally, right? You're just getting this experience in Batuu, which, again, if you want to pay for the experience, that's what it is. So again, that's along the lines of what, like, I don't Yeah, I don't see any way I go with like me and you would go and pay $2,400 a person. Like that's not
Yeah, it doesn't.
in my wheelhouse.
Yeah, not that. I mean, it doesn't interest me in terms of it's just too much, but it's interesting. I just would never spend it.
Yes, correct. So let's go into a little bit of the itinerary. I want to go through that real fast. So basically, it's 2 days, even though it's partially spread over 3 days, because your first day arrival time is actually not until 1:00, which I was a little surprised about.
Mm.
So you arrive at 1:00, and you go right into, apparently you check in and go right into a launch pod that takes you up to the Starcruiser. So again, obviously you don't leave Earth, but you get into a pod that simulates you leaving the planet and docking with the Starcruiser, which is called the Halcyon, up in
So
space.
like an elevator.
Like an elevator, probably. Yeah. And then you get a ship orientation, you get light refreshments. This is pretty cool though. You get sabacc lessons. And then it has something called muster. From 4 to 4:30 muster. I don't know what that is. And then you have a captain's reception. You have dining featuring live music. That's from 5:30 to 7. You have an outer rim gala, so a little party, I guess. Well, no, actually, it's only 15 minutes, so I don't know what that is. But then here's where it gets interesting. You have an unexpected story moment, and there's little things like this pop up each day. So this is what you're paying for. Mm-hmm. This is the full immersion into this experience. So and there's a little featurette out there that's a roundtable with some of the Imagineers that designed this thing, and they mentioned several times that look, you can go and do this thing and completely be yourself. You can never interact. You can just sit back and enjoy all the different things. Completely your decision, or you can fully immerse and basically be a character in the Star Wars universe. You can get clothes. They even say if you want to be a Twi'lek, you can be a Twi'lek. You can get dolled up and do all that stuff. So that I think is going to really intrigue some people. And so certain times during this trip, you have what's called an unexpected story moment. And then it says, for example, you might, 1, prove your mettle to join an elite smuggling ring, or 2, hide a stowaway to help the resistance. So there's things that you end up doing to kind of tell this little story that's happening with whatever character you're doing. So that's interesting. I feel like, I don't know about you, but I feel like if I'm paying this much, I'm doing everything I can do to be in the universe.
Oh yeah, I mean, you might as well. You
Right?
want to be like in character, or however that works out with. I mean, I almost would expect, just like briefly looking at this first little part of the itinerary, I would expect more of these story moments to be like,
yes,
throughout the day, and you can like come and interact with it as much as possible. Now, I'm sure there's things that are not in the itinerary. Like if you go find this one employee,
mm-hmm.
somebody on the Starcruiser, and just strike up a conversation, you'll get something out of it.
Yes.
Like if anybody's, I mean, there's a lot of Disney parks that do it, but like the Tower of Terror, they have a lot of staff that get really in character about the fact that you're staying at this hotel, and they act like, the people would that were working at this sort of creepy, haunted sort of like, hotel or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that part is always kind of interesting, the way that the Disney staff end up kind of like becoming characters.
Yes. But see, I'm a little weirded out though a little bit with when it says, it has a time frame on it, like from 7:30 to 8 you're doing this. It's like, so at some point, like do I have to stop doing it and move on to, what if I want to keep going somehow? I don't know.
Yeah.
Again,
it's an unexpected story moment that's expected to happen at 7:30.
Exactly. That's true. That is so true. And then after that, there's bridge training, and then there's a special atrium entertainment, until about 8:45. So, you're when you arrive at 1 o'clock, I mean, you're on a schedule till towards the end of the night there, right? So then you go to bed, you get up the next day, you have breakfast at 7 a.m., and then here's where it is. At 8 o'clock, 8:15, you have a transport that takes you down to Batuu. So you don't go in through the normal Hollywood studios. There's a back entrance somewhere. The hotel is actually built on the backside of Batuu. So if you look at the map of Hollywood studios, the Starcruiser is like right behind it. So obviously there's a back entrance into Batuu. You ride the Rise of the Resistance ride, which is very hard to get on. So I'm assuming you're kicking people, you're cutting the line and getting a.
It's a fast pass. It's got to be, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Then you have a story moment, again, in Batuu. Then you go ride Smuggler's Run. And then you have lunch, like I said, Docking Bay 7. And then you have a transport. So you're back at the hotel, back on the Starcruiser, by 1 o'clock. So you're just there in the morning. So there's not a lot of time to...
day, yeah.
Yeah, not a lot of time to really go around and do much. Basically, it seems like it's during that story moment that you really have the time to kind of go around. Now, could you choose to not ride Smuggler's Run? Probably, because like me, I've done it already. Maybe I want to go do more story moments, or go look at a lightsaber or buy a lightsaber or something like that. Go look at Doc Ondor's place, because that's where a lot of people buy stuff. So I'm curious on. But see, here's the thing too: is me and my wife were joking about this. Say you're walking around and you're like, okay, well, hey, there's Toy Story Land. I want to go check out Toy Story Land. What if you miss your transport back? Are you stuck on Batuu?
Oh, yeah, that's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yes. Like, how are they wrangling people that are part of this experience?
Is it like a chaperone kind of thing?
I would have to guess that it's like they have, Disney does have VIP tours, right? So if we hire a VIP, that person is with you all day, every time. I'm guessing that might be the same thing here, where you have somebody that's leading you around and you're not supposed to break off. So that would be a little tough to swallow a little bit, because there's no mention also here of Oga's Cantina. Oga's Cantina on Batuu is really cool. You can go in and get these exotic drinks and nice little snacks. Doc Ondor's, you got to go there and look around and buy stuff. And then can you go build a lightsaber? It doesn't seem like you have time to go build a lightsaber. There's all these things that you can do in Batuu that doesn't seem like you have the time. So that part I'm a little...
I wonder, because, not to jump ahead, but they have the lightsaber training when you come back. I wonder if they have parts of the Galaxy's Edge experience that are replicated on the Starcruiser, where, of course, it's not going to be the exact same room and stuff, but maybe they have all the same materials to build your lightsaber there, and you get to do it in the privacy of, this sort of like hotel experience, which some people may be into and some people may not. You don't have to wait in line or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. The whole structure of the itinerary... It's challenging, I think, especially for people that may want to sort of freeform it a little bit more in their Disney trip. But also thinking about, like, me, family, and we've got young child and, another child on the way. And it's like, with young kids, schedules are very difficult sometimes. And a lot of times, depending on a certain age, you're working around like nap schedules. And I'm like, oh man, like, okay, we would be back, not that we would go, but we would be back to the Starcruiser by nap time. But then it's like what if a kid has like a meltdown, right? Like, you gotta like go. I don't know. This whole the structure of it all makes it a little difficult, probably for some families to attach onto. And I feel like Disney is always such a family sort of experience. I really will wonder to see metrics and things of like, what are the demographics, ages of people going? Is it families? Is it people with younger kids? Is it adults?
Yeah.
Is it a lot more of the Star Wars fans that are like yours and I generation? I don't know. I'm really curious to see A, what they're hoping for, and then B, what they actually end up getting.
Very true. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, because reading all this too, I'd be very hesitant to take if I had a 5 or younger child. I probably wouldn't consider it, to be honest. Like, my child, I've been going to Disney every year for the last 7 years, and I have a 7-year-old, so she went when she was 1 year old, and like you said, now thankfully, my kids never really napped. Now she did fall asleep in the stroller, because it was so hot, and you're moving around, it was easy she would fall asleep, but it wasn't that difficult. But you did have to obviously change her diaper and eat her, feed her at certain times, and it's like it was different to take a baby and a 2 or 3 or toddler than it is now when I'm taking a 7-year-old. Like we just went last month, and she's now walking around riding rides and roller coasters. So it's like it's just a normal human that's going around now, and that would be okay to me to take now, right? So that would be my advice for this. I think there's because of this itinerary, because like you said, there's certain things at certain times, you'd be missing a lot of things if you had to like worry about doing stuff with your child because of their age, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think I'm totally in agreement. A younger child would be really hard to do a trip like this because you feel like, well, if something, were to happen or they have a meltdown or need something or need to be pulled away from a experience or story moment, you'd feel like you miss out.
Yes.
On something that you're paying, to be able to experience. So,
yeah,
which is, I mean, and maybe that's a thing that comes with all trips and vacations. But a normal hotel experience, you may not feel like, okay, bringing young children almost becomes part of like, it could make it more of a hindrance, which is just unfortunate for an experience like this, that Star Wars seems like such a family sort of brand and atmosphere.
Yeah. But if you're, if you run into an issue or need to take a break when you're at Magic Kingdom, though, you can leave. I mean, my wife did this with our little one. When she was like 2 or 3, she would get tired. They would just go back to the hotel for a couple hours and then come right back. And then you're not missing anything because Magic Kingdom is still there. This, though, if you miss out a couple hours, you're missing something. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So, anyway. So, like you said, once you leave the shuttle, come back to the Starcruiser, you have lightsaber training. Now, this is where... Now, this lightsaber is a little different than the Savi one because this one is the one that actually... ignites and extracts. So I don't know what kind of the way the picture is that you actually can interact with a probe or like a probe that's shooting at you. I don't know. That's going to be interesting to see that. You have droid racing competition. Now, I'm very interested in that. But again, this is a little weird. It only says it's 20 minutes. Droid racing competition for 20 minutes. Like, how do you really get into it for 20 minutes? I don't know. That's a little... I feel like by the time you like... Everybody kind of gets their droid and, they get set up and then... But like that's 20 minutes right there. But I don't know. Maybe they got to figure it out. You got a build model ship, Sabacc tournament. Oh, man. Like I am actually all about the Sabacc tournament. Then you have cocktails... And then you have dinner, Taste Around the Galaxy dinner from 5:30 to 7. And then you got story moments, and then you got a spectacular finale. There's like a 10 to 11, probably a little party, I guess, because this is your last night technically, right? So, and then the next day you get up and have breakfast, but then you leave. So you're out of there from 9:30 to 10 the third day. So that's the itinerary. That's right now the tentative itinerary. Now here's the thing. Here's the thing I would be wondering is which I'm assuming you can. I'm assuming you don't. Since you're paying all this money, if you don't want to do any of this, you don't have to do it. Like I feel like if you want to simply go sit at the bar and just drink the whole time, I'm pretty sure you can do that.
Or just play Sabacc.
Or play Sabacc. Like I was thinking that. Like I wonder if a lot of people might go in here and just play cards the whole time. I mean, I don't know. So it is going to be, So here's a quick thing. What it includes. It says a 2-night stay in a cabin or suite, ongoing immersive and interactive entertainment, food and beverage on the Starcruiser, and a quick serve meal at Docking Bay 7 are included. excludes alcoholic and specialty beverages. Admission to Disney Hollywood Studios Planetary Excursion, Galaxy's Edge, valet parking, and then you get a Star Wars Galactic Data Band, known as your home planet as a magic band. So you get the same kind of magic band thing that to interact with. So anyway, the rooms you can see the picture of the rooms. There's cabins and there's suites. I'm assuming the suite prices haven't been released yet because the rooms are a little bigger. Like the Saturn cabin is basically just beds. The captain's suite is basically has a little living room area, and then there's a class suite that has a living room area too. I think the captain's suite actually has a separate bedroom. I think so. You got bigger rooms but they haven't released technically prices on that because I'm assuming those got to be more expensive. Anyway, so I mean to sum all this up, I think it's a crazy idea. I mean, I would have never thought they would have went this way. But if you go back again and watch that video with the Imagineers, they've been working on this since Disney bought Star Wars. I mean, it's been in the making for like 5 or 6 years. So this was always part of it. You know, as the movies were getting made, this was part of it. You know, with the being set in the time still of the sequel trilogy, which is the Resistance and the First Order. So you're still going to see probably Stormtroopers from the First Order, and you're going to see possibly Rey and Chewbacca and stuff like that. But, again, very, very bold, very risky, in my opinion. Because, I don't know, at some point, again, depending on how many people can go, how many times are you going back and doing this, right? I mean, people go back to Magic Kingdom and Hollywood Studios all the time. But year after year, are you doing this? Like, if I do this next year, unless something dramatically changes with it, like, I don't see myself ever doing it again.
Yeah, it feels like a once in a lifetime kind of thing, the way it's set up to where once you experience it, there's not a lot of freedom or wiggle room to change it. Whereas like Batuu or something, maybe you can't do it all in one day. There's reason to maybe go back, and there's hopes that maybe they're updating this thing as, time goes on, and, maybe other characters or in the future they change out rides or whatnot. Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it's a point worth mentioning for sure. I'm just so interested. There's so many questions about it. Once people start going, how a capacity, you mentioned that at the top, how limited is it? Is it gonna, because it's gonna be one of those things that I imagine, because it's so new, it's gonna sell out when it first opens.
Totally.
So it's gonna feel like it's one of those things that's very it hard to get into. But once that tapers off, I'm really interested to see how successful it really becomes.
And here's the kicker too: is say you're lucky enough to be one of the first ones. Well, how many times have you actually heard like brand new things opening and there's not any issues? Like, what if something doesn't work? What if the lightsaber training all of a sudden breaks down? It's like, wait a minute, I paid all this and like I don't even get the, you know what I mean? So there's a risk right there in the first guests coming in that everything is working and everything goes according to plan. And I don't know. That's that part. I mean, what if you're in your hotel room and the screen that you see space in like flickers off? It's like, I don't know. Things like that. It's like it could easily take you out of it. And with that kind of money, it's like you hopefully expect to get the full experience. So partially, like I remember when the iPhone first came out, it's like I didn't want to buy the first one. I may not want to go right away. I may want to wait a couple months or to see how it is and to see if there's any glitches and maybe they work out some stuff. I don't know. I'm part of me wants to be the first one to get on there, but then part of me, more of me wants to wait it out a little bit too. So like you said, there's just a lot of questions, and I'm just I'm thrilled about it, but wow, it's like one of them things where I feel like almost kind of like almost like Celebration. It's like you can't really describe it until you actually experience it, and then when you experience it, it's like it's hard to even probably describe what the feeling is, right? So I don't know. I'm excited to try it, but it's tough to yeah, it's just tough to figure out when to go. I would say I would guess right now. Oh man, that's tough. Because part of me is like I'm trying to think of how many people can go. I would say I would say 500 would be too many. I can't imagine it being more up in there. Part of me is like that 250 range. That's kind of where my head's at. I could be way off there. I mean, they may be trying to do like 1,000 people at a time. But part of me is like, I don't know if that's. I don't know. When you look at the aerial videos of it, like the hotel actually doesn't look that big. So I don't know. I don't even know.
Yeah,
Like
I wonder if they. Go ahead.
No, I was about to say I don't even know the hotels that I've stayed in what the capacities are. So
Yeah, that's I was going to ask is if there's any sort of comparable capacity for other Disney specific hotels, but I wonder because they may not have to have as many window rooms if they can fit more of these smaller cabin room units in. Um, I'm assuming maybe they have some window rooms that face Batu. But if they're putting
well, no,
screens in a
because you're
lot
in
of the rooms,
space. You're in space.
yeah, I guess that's true.
All the windows are space. Is
So
space.
then they don't have to have any window rooms. So maybe you can fit a few more extra rooms beside each other.
Very much, yeah, very so. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Trying to see. Grand. I just hit Grand Floridian. So Grand Floridian, which is one of probably the most luxurious hotel at Walt Disney World. It says they have 867 rooms. So, I mean, if you want to say 2 per guest, let's just say 2 per room. Yeah, you can fit about at least 1,600 people in there at the least. At the most, if you do 4 per room, not which they can't because some have just single queen beds in them. Let's just say it's probably 2,000 people they can fit in there.
Yeah, that's
So
probably a safe bet.
So that's interesting. So if that's the case, I wouldn't think that this would be that big, but maybe it's half that big. Maybe they're expecting 1,000 people. I don't know, but that seems like a lot of people trying to get to Batu, in and around, and then back up, and I don't know. That's more power to them if they can do that. But that would be interesting to find out what their capacity is.
Yeah, I bet it's split into groups. Like I think you mentioned, to where if it's 1,000 or under, you have like 250 in a group or something. Yeah. I don't know how they do it. That could be more manageable. Because you also wonder all these moments, right, that they, sort of have listed on the itinerary. You don't want it to feel, if you want to be immersive, like, well, this was only a 30-minute experience and I kind of had all these other people in my way and waiting around.
Yes.
And you don't want it to feel like
you're in a park.
All that money and you're just waiting in lines.
Yes. I was just thinking that, like, if it's 1,000 people and you're walking around the ship, and if you're just constantly like making your way through the crowd, it's like that wouldn't be that fun, Yeah. And I'm starting to think I'm starting to think my listeners might be like, God, these guys are like talking me out of it. No, I don't want to do that by any means. Like, I am excited for this. I want to go and do this. I fully expect to go and do this at some point. But, like Cody said, I think there's just a lot of questions, and me being, I'm not a Disney expert by any means, but I've been there a lot the last 7 years. So I get the feeling there and I understand how it works. And how crowds and everything works. And they do a great job, a fantastic job of managing the crowds to where I've gone in the middle of a massive you can't get in Magic Kingdom kind of day, and you're shoulder to shoulder a lot of places, but you still are able to enjoy it. So, I just think I just think being massive Star Wars fans, like I don't see, unless something terribly goes wrong, like I just don't see us not having a good time. Like it's just a matter of getting there and paying it, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we talked a lot of bit about that in the show. We'll come back a little bit there towards the end, but I do want to run through a couple things here, other things here. Bad Batch is coming to an end. Next 2 episodes are the finales, 2-part finale. As this show is getting released, episode 15 is out there. So we haven't seen that yet, but we saw episode 14 last week, called War Mantle. Really kind of sets up this 2-part finale. We got a familiar clone that comes back, Gregor, which was a big question mark in my mind because if you watch Rebels, he is one of 3 clones. Rex, Gregor, and then Wolf, who we haven't seen yet. They all 3, survived whatever has happened this whole time. Now in Rebels, you're led to believe kind of that they all got their chips removed. I'm interested to see how they explain this with Gregor because there's technically no need to remove his chip right now because Order 66 is done and gone. And why does he ever, remove his chip? I don't know. Well, that they may never even go down that road, but that's a lingering question I have. I don't know, Cody. Just overall sense of this last episode and your feelings going into the finale.
Yeah, this last episode, not to say that I was completely like off the show, but it brought me back in, right? Like it had a couple episodes where it was kind of veering away from the main plot, and from the get-go, Rex sort of sends a message on that little hologram thing. I knew it was going to be a good one. The moment you see Rex pop back up and say like, "Hey, I need your help" or whatever, you're like,
Yeah.
okay. I didn't know that it was going to go into the whole Gregor part of it all yet. But I was like, okay, this is going to be good, however they take it, because we're getting back to the heart of helping the clones, the whole like chip portion. Then we get a lot of interesting stuff, obviously with Gregor and what's going on with him. And then, just getting to follow the whole team. It felt like this was a lot more, not that it was just more action packed, but a little bit more intense and the stakes were a little higher. So
Yeah.
I was definitely into it. And, of course, great cliffhanger, makes you want to come back and see the next episode.
That's exactly right.
And it feels like every time we mention an episode where Crosshair's involved, the episode feels like it's just a little bit better, like it's just turned up a notch. And so Crosshair, being in this episode, and then obviously you see that he faces off or when Hunter is sort of, stays behind, you're like, okay, they leave us right there with them coming face to face. And now you're like, I want to see more. So I feel like they did a really good job of how they've propelled this episode into wanting to watch the 2-part finale.
Yeah. And, to me, this was the perfect type of episode, right? And what I mean by that is, you still have the central story of the Bad Batch, like the Bad Batch is rescuing this clone and the danger that goes into that because they're on the run. Crosshair's trying to get them, and then of course the setup to the finale with Hunter getting caught. I mean, that's the story that's happening here. It just so happens that they throw in the callback, which is saving a familiar character that we know from Rebels and from the Clone Wars, which is Gregor. So you have the complete episode here, right? You've got the story because it could have been anybody. Like it didn't have to be Gregor. It could have been any clone. It didn't really matter because that part of the story was the most important part was our Bad Batch sacrificing themselves to save somebody because they trust Rex and putting themselves in this danger, even though Hunter is very hesitant about it, right? He's like, this just keeps getting worse and worse. I mean, it seems like he has that sense and they just keep trying to help. And now it's going to cost him a little bit. And yes, you're right. I think it's definitely setting up to be an interesting 2-part finale. The news today just dropped this morning that season 2 is definitely happening. So the last question I'll throw this at you. Now that we know it's coming, so to me it was interesting that they released that there's a season 2 before the finale, because you can always do it after, right?
Yeah.
So I started thinking, like, what does that tell us about how this season is going to end? Because to me, you would wait till at the very end of the finale, you would have this logo come up, sizzle, and say season 2 coming in 2022.
The Bad Batch will return in season 2. Yeah.
Exactly. But why did it come earlier? Does that change your mind at all, your thought process of what could happen in this last episode?
Well, I mean, it didn't. I didn't think a lot about it until you mentioned it now. But knowing that they just left us off on a cliffhanger, it almost makes me nervous now that, I mean, there's definitely going to be things unresolved because there's a season 2 in general.
Yes.
But it makes me wonder, will there be more unresolved than I either had anticipated? Not necessarily that I wanted, because my expectations they're not really, I don't have a lot of expectations for, they need to wrap it up by doing this, right?
Right.
I kind of wondered if they would, have something to do with the rest of the clones. Any kind of, will there be a group of clones that sort of like what happened in the previous episode, where we realized that more of them either have malfunctioning chips, and it's like sort of like a clone versus clone rebellion, civil war type thing on Camino.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm wondering if it's going to be a lot more intimate, where it really looks like getting Hunter back is the main goal, and then the season-long goal has been, well, how do we? Maybe they haven't said as much, but I think they want to save Crosshair.
Yes.
And it's going to be that whole push-pull of, if his chip wasn't supercharged or he didn't have the chip, would he still choose to follow the Empire?
Yeah, right.
And
I
really would like that part to be wrapped up by this season. But you have to wonder, are they going to continue Crosshair being the villain in season 2?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's one of two questions I was thinking too. I think, with that reveal, because if you think about, because I've watched every series that they've done, I've watched when it's been released, right? So I've watched Clone Wars from the beginning, Rebels from the beginning, even Resistance from the beginning, and then Mandalorian, and now this. And if you think about it, I'm pretty sure that at the end of every season of every show that they've done, they've wrapped up that season. There hasn't been a lingering cliffhanger or unanswered question, right? I can remember the end of season 1 of Rebels. It ended. It almost felt like the show could have ended at that point. But they always come back with a fantastic season premiere, right? That gets you right into that season. Vader showing up in season 2 of Rebels, stuff like that. So even Clone Wars, it wrapped up. The arc of those last 2 or 3 episodes, they wrapped up. So I don't see that changing. I do think that whatever is lingering right now, which is the Crosshair question, I think that does get resolved. Until I saw this. Because if they're telling me now there is a season 2, don't worry, there is a season 2, I feel like they're going to make something linger.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be one of the things surely it's not one of what they do in the DC shows where it's literally they cut right in the middle of a scene and then it doesn't end until the first episode of the next season. I don't think that'll happen.
Yeah.
But I think there's going to be a couple questions that go unresolved, like you said, a lot more than I thought. That's kind of where my head's at. But I will say the other thing, and I would love to get your opinion, is I think Well, here I ask you first. Do you think everybody survives this season? The Bad
Mm,
Batch. Do you think any of them do not make it out?
wow, that's it's tough. You know, I would think I would normally say that they're going to be safe. I mean, in the way that I see this is like this is a show on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
You know, it's like those things where I'm like, okay, this is a show about the heroes and the heroes win, right? Like it's those kind of non-show related things
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
I usually go off of. But the way they set it up with Hunter, I'm almost like, wow. I mean, what a him choosing to stay behind, and then how would that affect the rest of the team? How would that affect Omega? Um, would it be helpful for the story? And you think about a lot of mentors in Star Wars. You know, they
Yeah.
propel the story, they bring the main character into the fold, but they're not always around for the rest.
Right.
You know, a lot of times it's usually, a Jedi in the Force and they can come back as a Force ghost. We probably don't have that luxury here with Hunter and the other Bad Batch members, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like the whole mentor sort of trope makes me wonder, will it be the thing that propels Omega,
Mm-hmm.
to want to fight the Empire even more or something like that?
Yeah, and that's interesting thought. My first thought goes to whether or not Crosshair actually survives this.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
and part of me, like you, basically the road you're going, honestly, in the Star Wars theme, like I sense like a sacrifice coming from him. Like he gets saved, but then ultimately has to sacrifice himself in a sense, or maybe he sacrifices himself in order to save, which brings him back in a sense. I don't know. There's always,
Yeah,
like you said, there's always that mentor, but there's always that sacrifice. I feel like in Star Wars, like Kanan.
definitely. Yeah, the redemption. Well, yeah, sacrifice can happen from any kind of character, but there is this idea of villains being redeemed. I mean, it's in
Yes.
every trilogy, I guess, except for the prequels, um, because it's sort of a reverse tragedy type
Yeah.
thing. But you think a lot about Vader and obviously now Kylo and Ben.
Hmm.
That's a good point. I don't know. With them
Because
saying a season two's coming, yeah, that would be really interesting because now the fight becomes much more squarely the Empire,
yes,
not clone versus clone, because they are starting to distinguish this last episode. I guess we didn't really talk much about it, but the Stormtroopers,
yes,
it accelerated very quickly, and then you realize that okay, Gregor was one of the ones that was tasked with training Stormtroopers.
hmm
And I like the line where it's like, you taught him everything. He's like, well, not everything,
not everything. Yeah, exactly.
you can't, if you're not a
Can't
clone,
reveal all
you
the
can't,
secrets.
yeah. But yeah, that's interesting because like it really could shift to where season two is much more the familiar territory that we've seen, where it's a lot more stormtroopers. If they do
Yep.
any kind of time jump, it could be much more Empire related. Um,
I think
yeah.
I think I think like season 2 of Rebels, it'll just start opening up and being more broad of the galaxy, right? Like right now we're just centered on our group doing these little missions for Sid. I think I think definitely whatever happens these next 2 episodes, I think it's going to propel the batch to expand the galaxy. And I think it is getting more involved in whatever Rex is doing, and which is fighting back against the Empire, getting back against the Empire. I think ultimately Rampart is ultimately the major villain in this, right? Not Crosshair. Rampart's the one that is getting these stormtroopers going, and he obviously is going after the Bad Batch now. So I think ultimately it might be these guys trying to take him out, kind of thing, right? So
Hmm.
because we don't know about Rampart in the original trilogy, so maybe he doesn't survive all the way. Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's I think that's where I'm at with that. That's I think something's gonna happen to Crosshair. I hope he comes back to the group, which ultimately that would be the ideal storyline, right? And then they're the Bad Batch again. But there's still lingering questions about Omega and all that, right? I don't know where that go. That may have to go into season 2 and explore, because I don't think there's enough time in these next 2 episodes to really go down that road, if there even is anything in that road. I don't know. They made it seem like there was this big importance with her. Or there's something about her. I don't know. It almost seems like she's just a normal kid, like Boba Fett was, and she's learning to be a soldier in a sense, right? And maybe that's enough to figure. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a female version of Boba, of Jango,
Yeah,
basically. She's a clone of one of the greatest fighters in the galaxy, but she still has a lot to learn to become that. You have to
right.
wonder if the sort of Camino, what they're going to do with sort of enveloping the science research part,
Mm,
would be something that could be a tease towards the end of the season. Like you're saying,
right.
set something up for Omega, but maybe not answer all the questions. Um, yeah, I don't know. And I really still am missing, I think, that Force aspect. And I don't know
Yes.
how they involve it. You know, I had read rumors before the whole Bad Batch series came out that there would be like Rex and Ahsoka. And we know
Mm-hmm.
Rex is in it, so we might assume that maybe Ahsoka pops up somewhere from time to time. I just don't see her being in this season.
No, I don't either. And my thought always was, if Ahsoka does come into it, that's when I think you've got to see Inquisitors in this. I think that could be the possibility, is that the Bad Batch becomes such a nuisance that Vader actually is six Inquisitors after them, and that's when you get maybe the Force aspect, and you get Ahsoka, and maybe you get another Jedi that's been hiding out. I don't know. So I think that's where, to me, that's the only way you can bring it in, like you said. I think, because I don't think it's Omega. I don't think Omega is going to be Force sensitive at all.
Yeah, not anymore.
So anyway, last 2 episodes, season 1 is coming to an end. 15 is out there right now. 16 is going to be out next week, wrapping up on the 13th of August. So go check that out. All right. Real quick news, a little bit of news. Star Wars also released news that a Lego Star Wars special will be dropping on October 1st. And it is called Terrifying Tales, to kind of hit on your October Halloween special. So, it even sets up the timeline that it takes place after the events of Rise of Skywalker. It centers around Poe and BB-8 traveling to Mustafar. They're meeting up with Graballa the Hutt. So, all kinds of things happen there. And they're obviously going to Vader's castle, so spooky things happen. So, what do you think? You looking forward to this?
I mean, yeah, I think it's cool. I liked the Lego holiday special. So if it's more of that vibe, I think it'll be fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's super interesting that it takes place after Rise of Skywalker. The fun thing with the Lego, I mean, part of I guess the holiday special did as well. Um, but the Lego ones, they're not always necessarily canon. They kind of play fast and
Yes.
loose, and don't take themselves seriously.
Right.
But yeah, it's fun. I'm definitely gonna watch it.
It's Legos. Just think of it like Ray and Finn and Poe are actually playing with Legos, and this is the story they're telling, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that comes out October 1st, exclusively on Disney Plus. So go check that out. All right, and then really, I will mention I'm not too familiar with this news, but Lucasfilm did announce the passing of a gentleman that wrote a lot of books, J.W. Rinsler. I don't know if you saw that news, Cody. Basically, he's a Lucasfilm historian, wrote a bunch of books, behind-the-scenes books for Star Wars, for Lucasfilm. So he had passed last week. A lot of people on social media I saw posting about it. So, fortunately, he died of a battle with cancer. He's only 58 years old. So, Star Wars is mourning a loss right now from Lucasfilm right now. Okay. Yeah. So besides that, books. Again, there's still some High Republic books that just dropped. Kevin Scott's book just dropped. I'm looking at the wrong notes here. Yeah, Rising Storm back in June. Out of the Shadows just came out last week. So Justina Ireland's new book is out there right now. So go check that out. And, of course, War of the Bounty Hunters is still going on in all the comics right now. Okay, let's talk a little bit more. Let's just go back a little short topic here about Starcruiser. We spent a lot of time at the front of this episode really talking about the full details of actually the immersive experience. But I want to just throw out a couple questions and a couple interesting things to talk about with Cody here about look, a Star Wars experience is a Star Wars experience, right? Me even walking into Batuu, you do feel immersed into that world. It's very familiar. The sounds, the smells, and the people walking around, interacting. It's very, very Star Wars. It's fantastic. It really is a really cool experience. This Starcruiser takes it up a notch. You're fully immersed. Technically, you're traveling in space, kind of thing. So, but I guess the one question I would have is, this is a experience, but what experience would you want to do? Like if you, Cody, had the money and you obviously and Disney said, okay, we'll build what you want to do. What do you want to go see? How do you want to experience Star Wars? Is this the way you would do it, or is there something else that you would want to do or see? Is it something new? Is it something familiar from the old movies or something like that? I don't know. Or is there a different era that you would want to do? I don't know. Let's just talk about that.
It's a great question. So just to clarify, are we talking hotels or any sort of Disney related Star Wars experience?
Well,
like
I'd say
hotel.
Yeah, I'd say let's start with let's kind of keep it centered around this 2-day experience.
Somewhere where you would stay, not just
it doesn't have to be in a starship.
Batuu
It could be thing. Is it a planet? Is it just a planet experience? What would you want to do in a 2-day Star Wars experience?
Oh man. I mean, to be honest, I think the cooler thing, if possible, would be if there was a way to do a stay where you're not just in the ship the whole time, but you may be able to see maybe like 2 to 3 different like planet side locations. And they could even do a lot of like interiors. Like if you did, like assuming they do this sort of like you take a shuttle or an elevator that's like a pod to somewhere, like imagine if you walked off the pod elevator and now I'm in Jabba's palace, right?
Yes.
Like one of the iconic places in the original trilogy. I mean, I know we talk a lot about what era is sort of our favorites, but a place like Jabba's palace kind of has that vibe that would really come to life because it's almost like a cantina kind of feel. You could do a lot there because there's parts of it that obviously we see in the movie, but you put, I don't know, it might be hard. You put the whole Jabba puppet there, it becomes like one of those sort of Instagrammable moments. It's like, right, I'm going to take a picture of myself with Jabba. I'm going to go hang out over here where Boba was, and it's like, I don't know. I think that would be a really cool sort of aesthetic, and maybe if they even wanted to kind of like, I don't know if they wanted to like make it more specific, but you could do like a whole like Jabba's sail barge and Jabba's palace. You could do this whole sort of like Tatooine kind of excursion. Tatooine always stands out as one because there's a lot of options, but that's one. A second one for me, maybe just from the aesthetic, is like Coruscant, but maybe more specifically like the lower levels even.
Yes,
Like I don't know if
totally.
you could do, because I think about the 1313 game that was canceled, and even some of the we saw the Clone Wars episodes that take place somewhere in and around those levels, and for anybody who's not familiar, in Coruscant it kind of drops down, and it would kind of be pretty perfect for this idea of a hotel experience because
Yes.
it's a lot of it is kind of underground feel anyway. You do this big drop, so just put an elevator in, and I don't know if you can start people on the top floor and bring them down,
Mm-hmm.
or I don't know how you
Mm-hmm.
do it, but I like some of that aesthetic of Coruscant. It feels a little more sci-fi, but a little more like nightlife-y. It might be kind of one of those places that's almost like a Star Wars adult sort of like theme
Yeah.
park stay. You have a lot of the
Yeah.
bars and more underworld type environment. So I'd be really down for something like that. I don't know. What about you?
Okay, so I was trying to think of how I would do it, and you just actually, I think, gave me the idea because I love that idea of Jabba's palace. So here's what I would like to do instead of doing a hotel stay, because honestly, the spending the night part really doesn't interest me that much. Like I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I can honestly do away with that. Like what would be a great thing for me, and I think again, everything we talk about on here, Disney can have, because this is actually a great idea. But like I would be more prone to, let's say, like like you said, like you and your wife, and you want to take Cam and your newborn down there at some point. You want to go experience Disney. Why can't you have an experience where you can say, okay, honey, I'm going to go do this for the day, and this is the experience, like a Star Wars experience where you pay a ticket price or more money to get a day long experience. Like for example, like you said, like you jump on a starship, and they take you to Jabba's palace, and you walk out. Now think about this, because obviously they would have to build a set, build something to where you would walk down in there. I don't know. Now this might be a little crazy, but just think about how you could change the experience easy by using the volume as a backdrop,
That's a
right?
great thought.
Right?
Yeah.
So you could walk down there and not really tell if it's really a wall or it's an LED wall, but you can easily change out the set and put a new background for a whole different experience. Like if you want to travel
Yeah.
to the cantina, on Tatooine, or if you wanted to go to a bar in the lower levels of Coruscant. I don't know. I think to me, again, it'd be hard to kind of pinpoint exact, but I'm with you. I think Jabba's palace would be killer. Obviously, walking around the Jedi temple would be incredible. Yeah, like the lower levels of Coruscant, I'd be completely down for. I'm thinking, like the Cloud City, would be interesting to walk around and stuff like that. So I don't know how you do outdoors, obviously, but without building something like Batuu, or Galaxy's Edge, but if you're talking about doing experiences inside, like you could go and do. I mean, like you said, like go experience like one of the experiences, a sabacc tournament in Jabba's palace. Like go spend the day playing cards in Jabba. I mean, that would be. I would definitely pay for something like that.
See, so even like maybe taking this step back a little bit more, Batu, I've not been, so can't wait to be able to go. Really excited. I think it's a great idea. But one thing that I thought was interesting when they made Batu is that it wasn't iconic to anything original trilogy, right? They made it in the current timeline of where we were at the time, right? Which now we're past.
Right.
So this idea of maybe having little snippets of iconic things, even if it were in a smaller space, right? Like I don't know. I mean, maybe people like the fact that Batu is all one planet, but like, if you could walk down sort of this, portion of Disney and like over here is the cantina on Tatooine. Mos Eisley
Yes.
Cantina. Over here is Jabba's palace. I would probably much rather prefer, like you're saying, not a hotel stay, because I think I'm with you there, but a place that just allows you for a day, or you want to spend 2 days. For one day, I want to go to maybe a couple of like top 4 or 5, iconic scenes in Star Wars. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
there's
Mm-hmm.
the Lars homestead, which I know they have in Tunisia, but you can go there and take pictures and take your
Yes.
family, and I think that would be a really cool just vibe if it was just here is all your favorite sort of scenes from Star Wars made
Yes.
into a park to where you can
Yes.
have the food in the cantina and things like that, but then you can also have a ride that's like, I don't know, Hoth or whatever you want to put it in. I think that would be a huge. I would have to think that would be a huge hit for
I do
fans,
too.
and maybe more so for like the people deciding to take these trips are probably some of the older fans.
Yes.
So a
Yeah.
lot more connected to some of those original trilogy iconic and even prequel. I mean, obviously Tatooine places pop up in multiple eras, but
Yeah.
you could put some prequel trilogy
Totally.
stuff in there. So
Yeah. Naboo and yeah, any of those places that are in the names of, I mean Mustafar. I don't know if you go to Vader's castle, but
it's
that
just really hot at
it would be
Mustafar.
really hot. Yeah, but that's the thing is like again, I know it's hard to talk just money about some of these things, but like you build if you build a I don't know, a big area like a domed area or something like that, and that's the place you would go to take a transport to whatever place you want to go. And you can maybe have, let's just say you had like 5 different sets in there or something like that, right? And just think about that. So you can go to either Tatooine, you can go to Bespin, you can go to Hoth, you can go to Naboo, you can go to Coruscant. And you pay to do that experience, right? And then just obviously think about that, because then 1 year, 2 years, 3 years later, you can change it all out. And then you have all new experiences, right? You just, again, I know it's money, but I think that, like you said, I think that would be such a huge hit. People would just fork over money to do that. And it's not, it wouldn't be the $4,000 to do it. It'd be the, I mean, I would think people would pay an extra $200-$300 that day to do that experience, right? And
Yeah, I mean, I think they could make it comparable to a park pass.
it
I don't know
could,
where they'd put it, right? You're just talking about, money and land and how they'd install it. But like if they do this idea of making it more of an interior experience and not an outdoor sort of
mm-hmm.
aesthetic,
Yes,
I think they may have a lot of options there where it is almost like maybe there's a portion where you're walking outside too, like Epcot, where it's maybe a little bit more
yeah,
food
maybe,
and
yeah,
if they did go the route where it's a little bit not to exclude, but maybe a little bit more adult focused for parts of it, where
mm-hmm,
it's
mm-hmm.
not as many rides, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Right. No,
Because I
yeah,
think I think that's like if I were to choose an experience, like I mean, I'm interested in the Falcon ride,
Smuggler's Run, yeah,
the yeah Smuggler's Run, um, but I'm almost more interested just to like hang out
mm-hmm.
in the cantina
Yeah,
there. And then obviously like, to look and see what things they have you can like buy and just walk around and enjoy the aesthetic.
totally. No,
So I would be really down for something that's more of just, you're taking in these places that we're all familiar with. And like you said, if you can change them out, or if you just had little snippets, snapshots of each,
yeah,
not that it need like because I don't think it needs to all be one planet and totally make sense in a story. Like I think you can have sequel, original, prequel trilogy characters just all around. I think that's the way you do it, like they do at the other Disney parks.
yeah. They got rid of that
There's
concept though.
villains in
Yeah,
Disney movies that don't make it out of the movie and they're walking around the park. So you can do it, but I think if you did something like that, you'd have more reason to come back.
mm-hmm.
Because, like, let's say one day I just want to spend half the day in Jabba's palace because I like it, because
Yep.
I love that movie and it's one of my favorites. But then, okay, I just maybe I'll do another day and I'll go spend time over in the Mos Eisley Cantina, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like that's a way to keep people coming back to where I feel like maybe if you experience Batu in a couple days, you might kind of do it all. You know, especially if you're able to do it over a weekend, you could pretty
Right.
much hit it all. I would assume.
Yes. I've gone 3 times there now, but only one time, the first time, wasn't under COVID restrictions, right? So I was fortunate enough to experience Batu when it was fully open and fully utilized. Now, because the last couple times I've went, limited capacity, the characters weren't able to walk around, and interact. Some of the shops were obviously limited with you can just walk around anywhere you wanted. You had to wait in line to get into a certain spot. So you didn't do that. I didn't go into some places because you had to wait in line because only so many people can fit, right? So that really took me out of it. I think the only way to experience it is when it's fully opened and you can wander around, like you said, and go where you want, see what you want. Grab a cup of blue milk when you wanted to, and walk. It's just it is an incredible experience when you're walking around there because you do feel like. I mean, it does feel like Star Wars, and especially at night. The best part is at night, man, when the lights are out or the sun's out, gone, and then the lights are on, and it's just gorgeous looking at night. My favorite part was when I did this last time I went. I did the the droid depot. Like the park closed at 8:00. My appointment was at 7:45. So when I got done building, which was like 8:15, 8:20, I walked out and no one was around. So you're able to like take these empty pictures of Batu, which I have. It's just it's incredible looking with the lights and everything. So a little deviate there, but I agree with you. I think the ability to go to these places and experience them. I wonder. That brings up another question about the whole Starcruiser thing. I wonder if ever will the. I wonder if ever will the hotel stay part be possibly maybe be too much of an experience for people, or maybe it's not enough of an experience for people to want to stay the night there. What I'm getting at is I wonder if ever it will just be a one day thing where you show up, go up there, hang out, and then come back and not spend the night. Like,
Oh, like open to the public, like
well,
not
not
public, but like you still pay to get in or
you still
something.
pay to
But
get in, but it's
you
only a
don't
1 day
have to
experience.
stay.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
1 day experience. Like
interesting.
to me, that would be worth doing. Also, like I think I think a lot more people may want to do that.
Because I think you're right. I would much rather probably spend a large amount of time, like thinking about the other Disney trips. Like I want to go to maybe Magic Kingdom for the day,
Yeah,
right? Or Hollywood Studios for like. I mean, some people might want to like split it up and do half a day here, and that's probably fine as well. But yeah, at least like half a day to a full day at one specific part of a park.
that's what we do. We each day we now because you do have the park hopper option right now. It's slowly coming back now, but during COVID, you weren't able to do that. But before, when you had park hopper things, the only reason you would have technically to buy the park hopper options, in all honesty, is that if, like you said, you wanted to spend the morning at Hollywood and then go to Magic Kingdom at night so you can see the fireworks at night. Or if you had dinner reservations in one park, but you wanted to spend the day at the another park. So you would have to have the park hopper for. But we always, on our last few trips, we've always planned it to where we're at one park that day. All of our dining is around that park or right outside of that park. But we would spend the day there, yeah. So to us, that just made more sense because you're not wasting time traveling.
Hmm. Yeah, and I feel like if they did one of these ideas we're talking about, where you're maybe going to a more iconic Star Wars place or places, it would be cool to experience a few of these places within a day, to where they're all part of the same park or ticket package, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because as I'm thinking about it, some of these places are probably too small to be expanded upon into one. Like I mean, you could make Tatooine like Batu
Right.
and just put like Cantina, Spaceport, Um, Maybe something like Java's Palace. Like a lot of those things could probably all be replicated, but for some of the other planets, I think it would be it would probably be more appealing to me to be able to visit multiple within a day
Yeah.
and not be as limited.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if they'll ever get there because that would be a major investment, I think. I mean, hopefully this experience does pay off for them and they're able to expand. My big thing is I'm with you. I hope that one day we'll see experiences or a new park or something like that that's out of this era, that goes to a different era. Even if I don't care if they go to like Old Republic or something like that. Whatever. I mean, it's like something different than because I can't imagine that. I still have this belief that Batuu. I still have this belief that they will change eras in Batuu because 10 years from now, like there's going to be all new Star Wars movies out there and all new. It's like, are people even going to really care about the Resistance and the First Order anymore? It's like
who's the threat that Rogue Squadron's going to run into?
exactly.
It would be seemingly easy, I would think, to propel Batuu to the future era timeline, right? It'd be a lot harder to
Yes.
go back because then it's like little things like if there's ships, you could easily take the ships out and make them, the right X-wing, or they have the TIE fighter there.
Yeah.
That's a first order TIE fighter. That's probably an easy enough swap to original trilogy era, but how much easier would it be just to go forward a little bit?
Yes.
Just new characters.
Well,
That's
Rogue
who's probably
Squadron it would be previous, right? I mean, isn't Rogue Squadron taking place after Return of the Jedi?
Well, I think it's unclear. It says it's going to be the future era or something, like Kathleen Kennedy said. So it's unclear if it's post 9 or not.
Oh,
Like,
interesting.
because you could interpret that as future as in future timeline, or future as in just the future of Star Wars,
Yes.
which could be any timeline. So,
Oh, interesting.
I think it'll be after, but that maybe is a whole nother
Because that would be
conversation.
a different Rogue Squadron then. Because
Yeah, well, because I'm not as well versed in the Rogue Squadron books. I played one of the games, but isn't it like isn't Wedge
yeah,
like one of the mentors?
he's leading Rogue Squadron after Return of the Jedi. Yeah.
Yeah, so I almost see it as like this sort of like Top Gun sequel type thing, where even if I don't know if they'll bring back a older Wedge who will be like the guy training the new Rogue Squadron.
That's
But I
true.
see it as being
Oh,
this
okay.
is way after Luke and all them, and this is how we get all new characters, and
Interesting.
they're but yeah, I don't know.
That because you would think Poe would be in it then at some point.
Poe
But
would be great. I mean, it'd be hard because luckily for them, Oscar Isaac is older probably than he acted,
yeah.
so you could just let him be a little grayer.
Oh, you
Like,
think this
because
could be like years past Rise, not just
I don't know. I mean,
yeah. Well, that's true. I
because
don't know.
how hard is it to? This is where I think it gets really tricky. Anything they do after Rise, and this has become a whole nother conversation other than the
Yeah.
parks thing, but it's fun because you just have this huge galaxy-wide threat, and then Palpatine coming back, and the First Order, and then what? Like, is this going to be set 2 or 5 years later? And then now here's another threat.
I know.
So
Yeah.
maybe you're right. Where if they place it in between and put it more in the Mando universe, they might have more options with their current
Yeah.
timeline.
Yeah. I don't know. I think you're right though. Anything between 6 and 7, it's not that big of a threat because you still got the First Order that's eventually going to show up. So there's nothing bigger than the First Order in a sense. So that's interesting. It's interesting that if it's post 9, yeah, who could that be? Which in the books it's what around this era is a Yuuzhan Vong at some point, right? Around this era, which was 30, 40 years or something after Return of the Jedi. So
yeah. I mean, I'd have to go back and look. That could be a good conversation, good thing to dive into
yes,
on maybe Beyond the Saga, the
yes,
original Rogue Squadron books or
that's
something.
true. That's true. All right, so yeah, a lot of topics there, a lot of discussion on the Star Cruiser. Very interesting topic. I'm sure we'll talk more about it as more details arise and as the approach to the opening of that next spring in 2022 approaches. We'll keep discussing the details of that. Yeah, thanks everybody for hanging out with us. Hope you enjoyed it. Go watch Bad Batch. Get ready for the finale. We'll be back next week to talk about episode 15 and all the other Star Wars news coming out. As always, Cody, thanks so much for hanging out. Great discussions.
Yeah. This was a fun one. I enjoyed it.
Always always feel like we don't have that much to talk about, but then we dive into so much. It's awesome. All right. Take care, everybody. InsideTheForce.com. Go there and hit that subscribe on YouTube or any of the podcast feeds to get our latest episodes. Got a brand new, actually, our next episode, which will drop on Tuesday, will be our next Beyond the Saga, which is actually, we're talking about Rise of the Resistance, the ride at Batuu, which has a story there. So we've got, Hannah and I are breaking down that story and talking about that. So go check that out here next Tuesday. We'll be back next week. Take care, everybody. For Cody Geiler.
Good to talk to you about all things Star Wars, and excited to maybe take a trip down to Batuu sometime soon.
That's right. Yeah, we'll get you there at some point. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you next week. May the Force be with you.